In the next couple of months, pretty much nothing is launching in the cinemas. Major movie releases like the new James Bond movie have been pushed to the way end of the year. And also particularly interesting is a number of big productions, Disney productions, have now gone straight from what used to be cinema releases to their streaming platforms. And so the question I'm asking here today is the age of the cinema dead? Has coronavirus and streaming killed it? Speaking of coronavirus, I'm in the studio by myself. Our panellists this week are joining us remotely. We have Jonathan Seidler, writer, journalist and advertising guru. That's right, I'm calling him a guru, joining us from what he assures us is his sister's bedroom. And Ariel Bogle, technology reporter with the ABC Science Unit, joins us from her living/dining room. So, Jono, the question first to you. Again, by the way, love the decor.
Thank you.
Has the coronavirus killed the cinema release?
I'm not really sure it does. From what I've seen, there's maybe like one major studio, which I believe is Universal, who are trying to push, I think they pushed Trolls earlier, Trolls World Tour, I believe it was called. Not that I saw it because this is not my bedroom. But from what I understand, they pushed that one earlier, but they had separate reasons kind of outside of COVID-19 for doing that. But like Universal are quite renowned for trying to shut that window down and push into streaming earlier. And the major theater chains in the US are quite upset with them about it, to put it lightly. But everybody else seems to be respecting that convention, I guess, in the traditional sense, and just moving their release dates further on. It doesn't look like those windows are necessarily shrinking at the moment.
But Ariel, do you think one of the unintended effects of maybe COVID-19 is the fact that it's going to become a lot easier for those big companies to skip out that theatrical middleman?
I think we're all waiting to see how this plays out in the long term, and it also really depends on how long we're confined to our homes for the most part. I mean, even Paramount has moved one of its releases, I think it's called Lovebirds, to Netflix early because it wants people to see it. But all the measures of success for films, those first box office weekends, awards, those only happen when things are released in cinema. So there's a lot of incentives going on here for things to return to the status quo when we're all let out. And I'm not sure in the long term how much this will push streaming, but I certainly see that for the most part and for the moment, places like Netflix are the winners here.
See, that's an interesting idea, Ariel, this idea that when this thing, and I'm saying when because, dear God, I need to believe it's a when this thing finally ends, that there'll be like a reflex reaction that we want to go out to things like theatres and move out. Is that a thing that you think is likely to happen?
Well, certainly personally, I love going to the cinema and I have immense cabin fever right now, so I personally cannot wait. I think a lot of people do love streaming, and they are enjoying getting those releases that they thought they'd have to go to the cinema for early. But there's a lot of things getting pushed back. I'm sure people are aware James Bond's release date's pushed back. I think a lot of these studios are saving those premium properties for some day, some blessed day in the future when we can go see them in the cinema. Will they put those premium products on Netflix? Like, it really does seem like it would affect their brand long term.
I think Bond is such a cinematic franchise, if we are talking about that. Like I would, and a number of people that I know would only see that in the cinema. It's almost like it's designed for that. The amount of money they sink into that. And I read a figure somewhere where they were saying it's like, how are you going to get $2.7 billion return, which is what the last Avengers brought in box office takings from streaming when everyone's paying $9 or $10 a month. Like, you've pretty much got to have the whole world watching it consistently for a year or something. I don't even know what those numbers are, but it's insane. So you do need to have it, but it's also that idea of all being together in the cinema. There are certain tentpole releases which don't only rely on that, but I almost think like we rely on it as well as a cultural event. And yeah, we've got Tiger King on Netflix, but it's not really the same as all being in the cinema or seeing Bond at the same time.
I guess the question is whether or not this big crisis can affect what was traditionally the sort of film that would have worked, which is basically franchise blockbusters and kids entertainment, because a lot of the big kid stuff like your Frozen 2s and stuff like that still do great, incredible business at the big screen. I would say my early prediction is that the kid stuff is going to move faster than the franchise stuff. What do you think?
Especially at the moment, given all these kids at home with parents who are trying to work at the same time, any new content that comes that might have once been going to the cinema now on streaming platforms is just going to be embraced with open arms. But I think the studios, once this ends, will still be after those big cultural moments that can only come from a premiere where people are there in physical space. So certainly the Marvels and the DCs, I think we can expect to return to the cinema. But when it comes to those sort of more indie films or more adult dramas, I think there is an open question for their future in cinema, especially if the studios see an embrace of them on streaming platforms. But at the same time, as we've discussed already, like there's no measure of success for streaming. Like Tiger King is certainly the biggest cultural phenomenon documentary, the only thing that's being talked about apart from the coronavirus. But we still don't actually know how many people watched it.
It's funny because there was obviously that Sean Parker experiment a couple of years ago where he was trying to get people to pay a certain amount to watch a film as it was at home, kind of like as you would see it in the cinema, and you'd pay a real premium, but you pay per film. So if you wanted to see Bond in your home cinema, you'd watch it at home. And that kind of collapsed for a number of reasons. But I wonder if, given what's happening now with social distancing and how long that's going to take, whether that will have a resurgence.
All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show. And also, if you have got a question about how media and technology is changing in your world thanks to the crisis that we're in, I'd love to hear from you with suggestions for what we should talk about on the show. You can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, and I will get it on next week's show. See ya.